Hey guys, hope you are all having a great morning today. So much has changed in so little time. The economy, the markets, real estate, global supply chains and everything in between have seen a lot of changes, but one aspect that many have ignored is that of religion. That's right, the frustrations that religious organizations have had to endure have been severe to say the least, and they have reached the boiling point to where significant changes will be needed to make at a fundamental level if churches plan to remain in business for years to come. Today, we are going to be talking about transitions churches might be forced into making if they want to survive in a post-pandemic world. Like I said, I want to bring new types of topics related to economics to give people a very broad, and fun, perspective into the changes that are taking place but which are not discussed. Also, I sound like a broken record, but come join my Discord. So many people have joined and we are all having fun and discussing all kinds of theories and analysis on meme stocks, the markets and everything in between. Links will be in the video description and in a pinned comment. Before we start, let me quickly state that I am not a financial advisor, and that all content discussed in this channel is simply information gathered that I deem important for people to know, so that they can make informed decisions. All efforts are aimed to better understand the nature of the current market in anticipation of the greatest squeeze in financial history. Let's dive right in. When I last went to church, which was done as a favor to my parent, I noticed something interesting. Most of the people attending that Sunday service were older members. There was a very notable lack of young people at the church. Needless to say, I have been present in countless conversations with priests and church administrators, and they all have the same complaints when asked what the biggest challenges the congregations face. Among whatever they say, you will almost always hear that the ever-growing secular world is in deep need to find religion, and that there is little to no interest from the youth to commute to church or take part in any form of activity. Many say social media has corrupted and rotten their brains, others place blame on the parents for lacking the initiative to foster interest in God. I have my own theories about this, none which I will share since they are bound to be controversial and honestly, have no redeemable point in being expressed in regards to the objective of this video. What is of importance here is that right now, the religious world is facing a crisis that is not often talked about. How can religion stay in business and, more important, stay competitive in a world that already saw diminishing demand pre-pandemic and also massive drops in the post-pandemic world? The pandemic has sorted out the winners and losers across all industries. Churches have historically performed well in dire times, because they see an influx of people coming to seek comfort from the church, who offer this through worship and prayer. But this pandemic has changed this, and churches have not seen the influx of people you would have imagined growing as the pandemic ravages the entire world. I think the main reason for this is that with so many things going online, whether it's work or shopping, and the churches also competing for an audience through their online sermons, they have not been able to compete with the likes of consumerism. Why attend an online service when you can go shopping for the hottest Gucci bags that are on discount for the next hour? Why attend an online sermon when you can browse through TikTok or listen to the newest simulate and trade video? My point is, in a world where everyone is moving heaven and earth for your attention, I believe it to be almost impossible for the human being, especially the younger you are, to have a good enough attention span and interest in listening to a sermon, which is at a biological disadvantage against shopping and social media, which boost dopamine in the brain. As restrictions have been lifted and many churches have reopened the doors, their worst fears have been realized. Many frequent goers have all of a sudden stopped attending, and this number is only growing now. And with decreasing attendance to churches, the question becomes, what will happen to churches now that they will not have enough people to maintain the costs of business? Well, there are two options. Either religious organizations decided to start closing churches that are underused because of a lack of attendance, or the more interesting option, they will start merging churches together. Economists have long viewed and analyzed religious groups as businesses, and anyone arguing that church isn't a business lacks some serious common sense. In dating back to 1776, Adam Smith, one of the biggest if not the biggest pioneer in political economy, argued in his magnum opus, The Wealth of Nations, that churches are enterprises, and that in a free and competitive market, things like mergers, acquisitions and bankruptcies are inevitable. So, let's quickly talk about the rising tide of disbelief. Way before the pandemic, America has been experiencing a dramatic drop in the amount of citizens who identify as Christian. In the year 2000, 82% of the population identified as Christian, and now polls tally the number of people identifying as Christian at 75%. I guarantee you, as baby boomers start passing away, you will see this number plummet like a GME or AMC chart on bullish news. A big recent survey showed that 30% of Americans say they attend religious services at least once a week, and this figure has fallen steadily from the 45% that was recorded back in 2000. So, seeing this from the eyes of an economist, the only way that church administrators need to look at this if they want to switch things around is by making religion attractive again. 3/4 of Americans say music played a big factor, and 85% considered social activities as a lure. An interesting approach for churches, viewed as enterprises, is that they should revisit the idea of engaging with people where the culture is today. Churches have a lot of stigma tied to the general impression of boring sermons where nobody really is paying attention and everyone is counting the minutes to leave. Churches need to revisit these points and make changes that are culturally sound and fitting with the modern customs of modern society. In other words, you cannot expect the customer to make the effort to come to you anymore, since now there is way too much competition. Instead, you need to bring your business to them, and this is where churches are failing. Many churches have been noted to be too slow to adapt to the online world, and many even been too slow to reopen back up. I guess even priests and administrators got used to sleeping late on Sunday. By not being innovative as a business and quickly adapting to the changing world like every other business tried to do, and instead being arrogant enough to think people wouldn't leave them, churches are now experiencing a problem which has been coined as church hopping, where members jump back and forth between churches, instead of staying with a fixed congregation or sermon. In a recent poll in 2020 by Barna Group, 14% of people switched churches, 18% were attending more than one church, 35% were attending only their pre-pandemic church, and a massive 32% stopped going to churches altogether. So, now that we have these figures, let's look back at the two possibilities of how the church can restructure its business to be viable for growth. The first one requires an acceptance that the real estate which they own oftentimes works against them. Churches have been noted to occupy 80% more space than what they use, and the costs of operating these locations make it impossible to keep up. Remember that churches often occupy big locations in big parts of cities, and the annual budget for some of these places can easily average in the 6 to 7 figures per year. The costs are so high that oftentimes, the repairs that are needed are ignored by the church, because they simply can't afford to make them. For religious organizations to survive, they will need to cut the losses by closing down many churches which do not see good attendance and where the likelihood of growth is impossible. The second more radical approach will be merge churches together. Obviously, this will have plenty of issues, because a business with two leaders will lead to plenty of clashes and cultural changes that can drive away members. Differences in how to administer finances will handicap those unable to compromise, and the weaker church will always be the one to lose most of its members. But still, these megachurches, as I will refer to them, if done correctly, can bring in more regular attendees, which will cut the cost of running service for the overall organization. Competition is healthy for an industry, but in an oversaturated one, sometimes mergers are the best way to bring better quality to individuals. The pandemic has ravaged the world, and churches have been one of the biggest victims. They assumed their members to remain loyal, only to watch them easily move on and never to return. Religious organizations need to adapt to the changing culture and habits of people if they are to slow down or even turn around the decreasing number of attendees. This video was meant to give you some economic perspective to the oldest type of business in history. I know it does not have direct ties to GME or AMC, but like I had said, I wanted to talk more about the economy and touch on some various topics that will give you guys more knowledge to how the economy works overall. I want to disclose that I am not a religious person at all, and that nothing I said here was meant as an insult. I simply view and recognize church as a business, but I do hold respect for people. If you felt offended by my views, do know that I hold no contempt against your worldview, and that nothing here was said with the intent to offend you. It was merely done in a way that best encapsulated the topic of church as a business within the scope of economics. I hope to have inspired a couple of wrinkles in this video, and I really hope you take a moment to let me know in the comments if you enjoyed the video and what your thoughts are. Leave me a comment with your opinions as to the matter or as to whether you liked this type of video or not. For the love of tendies, join my Discord already. We are almost at 3,000 members in, and we are having tons of important conversations in regard to everything related to the squeeze, meme stocks, overall market conditions and economics. It is a shill-free server with tons of people who, just like you, enjoy this type of content and want to be around similar-minded people. Come on over and I promise you to have a good time. I have a Patreon link in the description as well as some one-time donation links for Cash App and PayPal. Thank you again for being a part of this channel. I will continue striving for better content. Hope you keep having a great day, and I hope to see you later today on the recap video. Until then, keep on buying the dip into the moon.